Welcome back. Now we switch to English, so I think there's a possibility, not I think, for sure there's also possibility of translation, so if somebody need it, please take your devices. Thank you. And as we have been discussing kind of a political level, a military level, also a modernization level, how to modernize our forces in our early panels. Now we are going to discuss how are we innovating NATO, which is a big thing, because of course innovation is something we all need. We need innovations and to look to the future. And the tool we have at disposal at NATO, member states have it. The Defense Innovation Accelerator for the North Atlantic, Diana. And I would like to welcome here Kelly Chan, from NATO Innovation Fund, and Adrian Dan from Diana Transition Team, which is not the same thing. They are working on some a little bit different topics, but I think we can nicely combine them. But you know, my first question, a little bit lighthearted, if I may say so, is that militaries are famous for their acronyms. Now we have Diana. How much time it took to come up with this acronym? Maybe Adrian, you go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Very, very good question. And you know, at NATO, it's not just the military that uses acronyms. It's also the political staff. And a lot of these decisions are just being made in a room with people from different countries. Sometimes, you know, they didn't sleep so well. Sometimes they had a rough morning. And we're just sitting in a room and deciding on you know, papers, documents, and sometimes it's names of agencies and NATO institutions. And I guess that's the story with Diana, Defense Innovation Accelerator for the North Atlantic, which is somewhat an interesting name because actually our mandate is to focus on commercial, private technology. So we're not per se a defense technology accelerator. So I guess that's also a good start for our conversation. Just to give a bit of an insight into the NATO innovation universe,
Yeah.
which is a recent effort. It started a couple of years ago. I guess NATO feels the pressure that we have to adapt as an alliance, to adopt new technologies. Also to some people in the room that might know, NATO has now 5 operational domains. So we have the conventional domains, but we have cyber, we have space, which are predominantly commercial domains, right? So the big majority of companies in these spaces, they're private companies, and that's where the innovation stems now from. And NATO has to adapt to this new reality. So we kind of had to figure out tools on how to interact with these new domains and the private sector. And we, of course, we look towards the private sector to find these tools. And 2 of the main tools to engender innovation right now are accelerators, innovation accelerators, and that's a model that works everywhere around the world, and VC funding. So we kind of replicated those 2 in a NATO context. That's not an easy task. We're 31 allies, and we have to agree on everything that we do and we create. But there's also a huge opportunity.
Is this difficult? I'm asking this because yes, there are, of course, as you said, in NATO we have to agree on everything, all of us. In this particular thing, is this difficult to agree on something? Because it seems it is kind of a harmful, if I can use this word, you know, like, okay, spending money on innovations or on maybe new technologies. There's connections to commercial spheres, which it makes all of the sense. So is it difficult to find the joint decisions or to find do you need to compromise a lot?
Yeah, so I'll start since I've been in NATO HQ for a while as well, and then I'll pass it on to Kelly. Just a few thoughts here. I think and also relating to what was discussed before with the defense minister and the Slovak ambassador to NATO. I guess the Ukraine crisis helped a lot. It helped allies understand how important innovation is to respond to a crisis. It also gave a measure of a contemporary crisis. It's not, again, not just conventional. It's in the information domain, it's in the cyber domain. There's so many things that it's even in the space domain. So there's so many things happening that affect our societies, and we need to respond properly. So I guess that was a big boost for NATO's innovation initiatives. Of course, they're not just related to Ukraine, so they look at the alliance as a whole. But the context was very good, and it helped us a lot on creating consensus. And I think it's the first time in the history of the alliance where allies actually moved very, very fast in agreeing on what should be done. They were very willing to provide the funding, which is, again, doesn't happen very often. It has to be negotiated for a long time. So I guess it was the best possible example on how we can actually work together to protect the alliance.
Right. So in terms of agreement between different nations, so the first agreement is for all the allies to come together to form the Diana and the NIF. But in terms of what we know and the motives and the objectives of Diana and NIF, that we're still evolving over time with the new leadership that has been brought in. And one of the most frequent questions that we get is, what is the difference between Diana and NIF? And also on my side, I'd like to explain a little bit about the NIF and how we're thinking about investing. So I'll let Adrian talk on the Diana side, but they're on the accelerator side. And then the NATO Innovation Fund is a pure form venture capital fund. So the 5 founding partners.
I'm sorry, I also have a question about it, so it's great that you are getting into it. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah, perfect. So we are a venture capital firm. The 5 founding partners, including myself, have all come from the venture capital world. And we are specifically investing 1 billion euros into defense and security startups, as well as what we call in industry deep tech. So deep tech is really hard engineering, hard science kind of inventions that could potentially in the future be applied to defense and security. So it's both those vertical companies right now, as well as technologies that encompass a technological leap that could be commercial, like on the private side right now, that in the future could serve government. So in terms of stage of funding, we're on the early stages. So companies that are relevant to us are ones that already have a minimally viable product, but they're in the initial stages of finding customers, of going into government, deciding on the final, I guess, model for how they want the company to grow.
Yeah, if I may just add on that. So that's what a VC fund does. On the accelerator side, it's more like a looking at founders that wish to create a company, like very, very early stages. Like for a fund to invest in a startup, the startup should already have a team, should have maybe a product, should have some commercial traction, selling to customers and so on. On the accelerator side, we're looking at startups that want to look at the defense and security sector. So what we're basically doing is we're providing grants, we're providing non-dilutive funding. So basically just giving them grants, and then they would join our accelerator program, where it's sort of an educational program, and we coach them on how to develop their business. And our grants are not very, very big. It's 100,000 euros when you join the program, and 300,000 euros if you pass into the second stage of the program. The program has 2 stages. And the logic here is that once a company enters our program, it is much more fit for VC funding. So the way it works, it is a company starts in an accelerator program and then it can access VC funding. It's not necessarily a company doesn't have to be in an accelerator program to access VC funding, but that's the usual path because it provides them with information and it makes them fit to be invested in. So that's where we also work together. We're creating the pipeline. One of the pipelines that the NATO Innovation Fund can invest in. And we're also creating an ecosystem. So Diana's mission is also to bring industry and funds together to look at these companies and create value for allied nations. Because in the end, the goal of both initiatives is to get technologies in the hands of operators, and that would be militaries and other institutions from NATO nations.
So from both of you, let's imagine I have a company, I have a startup, I am thinking about something which may or may not be for defense security purposes, maybe dual use or something like that. But I think that I have something at disposal. So what should I do if I'm just, I don't know, for the first time I hear Diana, for the first time I hear Diana Transition Team or NATO Innovation Fund. So from both of you, what would be your advice for me? What should I do?
Should I start? Yeah.
If I, yeah.
From our perspective is, and that's a very good example, we would like you to understand what defense and security means as a sector and decide if your business is viable to enter that sector. So Diana doesn't just want to pull companies into the defense sector. We want companies to understand the sector and decide on their own if it's feasible from a business point of view to enter that sector. And ideally for us, we want to have more successful technology companies in the alliance. That's our main goal, right? So not just having more defense companies, because defense is a difficult sector. So as long as you can build a successful commercial business, we're interested. If that business can also migrate towards defense and security, that's even better. So this is our main goal, trying to create that framework where you can decide and you can access funding to develop your business, whether it's just commercial, and hopefully it will also come towards the defense and security sector.
One thing to clarify in terms of our funds, and when we say defense and security, we don't necessarily mean just military. So on our front, when we're thinking about security-related startups, these are anything that is deep tech, that I explained before, is hard engineering, hard science, that has the potential to secure an enduring future for the alliance. So when we think about important problem spaces that we're solving, it's very much also energy transition. We're thinking about cybersecurity. We're thinking about biotech, food security. So a much broader definition than when we traditionally think about defense. And then Andrej, to your question in terms of a company that's starting out, they have a fundamental technological innovation, right? And now they're thinking about, okay, what market am I actually applicable to the NATO Innovation Fund? And I'd say that that's something where they should absolutely speak with us. And our team, one of our specialties is understanding what, in terms of defense and security, what are the major problems? And for us to see a technology and realize that our investment team to realize, oh, that technology could be applied there. So we are seeing what has the future potential to be applied to the government, whereas here we're looking to meet as many teams as possible that are creating fundamental technological leaps that can be either applied commercially or to government.
So how successful it is so far in terms that how many applications are you getting again from So are those the companies who are already very well established, or are those like more or less startups, or this is kind of a combination?
Yeah. Great question, and we just closed our first challenge application program, and what we have to understand here is we're looking at different stages. So we operate differently, the two structures. So what we're doing is every year we have a couple of challenges, and those are like competitions. Like we have topics that the startups have to respond to. Those are based on our strategic direction. The strategic direction is created by our board of directors, which is allied nations. So basically it's a feedback process. Allied nations come to us and they say, look, we think these areas of technology are important to us, and then we formulate challenges based on those challenges to respond to allied nations' needs. So once we have formulated challenges, we publish them, and then startups that can respond to a solution creatively. It doesn't have to be very narrow, like just responding to what we actually have drafted. They come to our challenge program and they can apply. This year we had 3 challenges: information security, sharing, energy resilience, and sensing and surveillance. And on those 3 challenges, we had 1,300 applications. So that's 1,300 applications, which is a very, very good number in terms of what an accelerator usually gets.
How many you said?
1,300. And out of those, we had 1,200 unique companies. So I think that's a good number for the first year, for 3 challenges. For next year, we have more challenges planned, so we will have hopefully a bigger number of companies. The applications are screened, and those companies that pass the first stage, they receive funding. They receive 100,000 euros just to enter the program. I would just say that in terms of what commercial accelerators numbers usually are, this is a very, very high number, even for international accelerators, and it's a big success. Now we have to transform that success into actual results. So we're gonna choose those companies that we think will bring value to the alliance.
Can you sort those applications? Can you sort them out geographically? From are some member states, companies from some member states, I don't know, a little bit more active? Maybe also because I don't know the startup ecosystem or whatever. I'm just now making things up, but you know what I mean, probably. Yeah.
I mean, I won't go into details, but just of course, and that's an important point for the alliance, and that's also a strategic mandate for both of our bodies, is to build ecosystems which are underdeveloped in the alliance. So of course, right now, in the number of applications, in the number of interactions, you will see those countries that have industrial and innovation ecosystems in place, because that's easier for them to actually apply. But what we're trying to do is create a sort of balance and also look at areas which are underdeveloped to help them be able to create those companies that will be able to access funding from the NIF or from Diana.
Okay.
Yeah, so on that front, to make sure that we are, so a fundamental reason why we were created is because investing in deep tech in Europe, there was a fundamental lack of funding. So we have a ton of top European universities kicking out just globally recognized talent, but then the ecosystem to be able to boost up those startups and fund them through the various life stages of a startup just was very lacking. So the Diana and the NATO Innovation Fund are parts of different stages of helping the startups grow to eventually, hopefully, very successful companies. But our mandate is also boosting the ecosystem. And how we think about that is not just focusing on the ecosystems that are more mature, but really spending a lot of time in terms of education, in terms of helping different startups in regions that perhaps are less exposed to innovation, to help them grow and kind of boost them up to an area where folks don't need to leave the country or the region to be able to raise funding.
Is it usual that you are getting applications from companies or from a company which is, I don't know, based in one country, or you see also some kind of corporations between companies, and then they are applying, either there is a, I don't know, kind of consortium or something like that. So how maybe how it works, and how is it more like a single companies or more consortiums? Or again, this is something like a, I don't know, is it how it works? Yeah.
Yes. So an unfortunate situation that I guess NATO and broader we were seeing before the start of Diana and the NATO Innovation Fund is that a lot of startups in countries without mature ecosystems, those founders were moving to the more mature ecosystem. So they were moving to, for example, the US, or they're moving to London, the UK, where there are a lot more investors that understand deep tech that could potentially invest there. But we'd love for folks to be able to stay in their own region, to build their companies in their own region, and to make sure that we're on the ground in every region and allowing those companies to flourish there. And an important part when we were talking about the countries that stood us up. So with the NATO Innovation Fund, we have where we get the money, we have 24 nations that are our LPs. And with those 24 nations, we're looking to invest across the 24 nations, and our LP partners are very important parts of the network that we bring. So we're very excited that Slovakia is one of our LP nations, and we're working very closely with our LPAC rep, who's going to be speaking later today. And it's a really important partnership to make sure that we are seeing the innovation in every country.
So you see this interest from the member states to continue with those ideas and maybe to expand them financially, also in terms of you mentioned that you've got these 3 challenges. So it will expand into more areas that are somewhat connected to all those things you mentioned about. This is when we said defense or security, many people just think about tanks or whatever. But yeah, you mentioned food security, there were energy resilience and stuff. So you want to expand those things, yeah. And member states are interested in it, yeah.
Yes, definitely. And one of the differences between our 2 bodies is Diana is actually a NATO agency, whereas in the NIF is a private structure funded by NATO allies. So it's kind of a difference of approach. At Diana, we have 31 allies, so the whole alliance is governing Diana. And we see a lot of interest from nations to actually formulate their needs and then have us and the NIF respond to those needs. So yeah, there's a huge interest. On your question about consortium and having different countries apply for programs, what's important here is that there's a big difference between our model and the EU model, where on the European Defense Fund and other initiatives, you would have consortiums from different countries applying for funding. Our programs focus on single companies and developing those companies to be viable commercial businesses. And it's very, very, very focused on the commercial side of things. So regardless if they sell to private sector or to the government sector, they should be viable commercial businesses. So it's not just grant giving, it's more of a building a very, very strong commercial logic within the DNA of that company. So we're trying to build successful businesses, and that's at the core of everything we're doing.
Kelly, as Adrian said, Diana is a NATO agency. Your fund is more like a business-oriented business structure. So how is NATO doing? Because sometimes people think, okay, NATO, big agency, a lot of bureaucracy and stuff, and maybe on your side more commercial, even more business orientated. Of course, this Diana, as you said, is also doing this because those companies should be viable and not just, you know, okay, I am asking for some grants, give me some money and I will do something. But you know, your cooperation with NATO as an organization, you know, which has a lot of rules and stuff, member states and this and that. So is it working from the, let's say, from this more like a business orientated, more commercial side?
Yeah, I think it's critical that we are a private standalone VC, in that if all of our decisions had to go through, we were saying, the slower process of NATO and whatnot in terms of investing, and NATO doesn't have, I guess, the background in terms of investing experience within these deep technologies. If all of that, it wouldn't allow us to move as quickly in terms of innovation and investing as we'd like to. And then one point is that our founding team all come from private venture capital firms, but we have, between the five of us, 6 decades of specifically deep tech investing experience and a lot of crossover with defense. So for example, at my prior fund, I was a partner at a Silicon Valley VC that's one of the largest deep tech VCs globally. We had dozens of portfolio companies that specifically served in the defense and security side that were overlapping with a lot of your kind of government accelerators, such as In-Q-Tel. So it's not that when you're a private VC, for example, defense might not make sense. It's that we're making sure that the companies that we invest in can stand alone in terms of whichever customer direction that they sell to, whether it's government or commercial, that they can become a successful company by themselves. Because if the company is only looking at one channel, then a lot of companies end up, they run out of funding and then they can't continue anymore. So we need to make sure that these companies are standalone, and being private is a very important part of that.
And Kelly, may I ask you a little bit, maybe personal question? You said that you've been working in the past, you know, Silicon Valley VC. Now you moved into this. Why? Because maybe, you know, maybe even I would put it that, you know, very bluntly, maybe even the salary was better in this sector, and you decided to move into it. May I ask why?
Yeah, so I was Silicon Valley VC on the private side, and now still working on the private side, but because we're a private standalone VC. However, the mission here is it's so important to me, as well as it's I think it's very important for the entire alliance that we're thinking about investing and boosting the ecosystem in Europe to make sure that we're keeping the really critical technologies in-house, in-house meaning within the NATO alliance, and then allowing the alliance in terms of our government and defense partners to be able to adopt these technologies as they grow.
We also have another question from Slido, which you can maybe, you know, to wrap up a bit our conversation over this question. So what kind of innovation, product, solutions are you looking for? For example, scalability, SW, HW, maturity, and so on. So maybe if you can say a few words about this.
Yeah, so on the startup side, here the question is about, are we looking at hardware, software, what maturity of technology? And the answer is all of the above. So nowadays, so I've been a traditionally hardware and software investor on the automation, robotics, industrial front. And nowadays we're seeing the hybrid of the two become very critical as you're thinking about defensibility. And product-led companies. And in terms of maturity of technology, we're looking at something that could potentially be adopted in the near future. But that said, it's very different across the different technologies that we evaluate. For example, for energy transition, some important themes are, say, nuclear, long duration storage, and some of the research for these types of technologies take a lot longer than other types of technologies. So it certainly depends on the industry that you're playing, but whatever industry that within the broad scope of what the NATO Innovation Fund will invest in, we want to make sure we are investing in the furthest along technology in those specific verticals, to make sure that we're bringing to the alliance the top technological solutions.
So music is playing, so everyone want to add something, just maybe one sentence.
Just one sentence, pretty much in line with what Kelly said. We would be looking on how adoptable that technology would be, and on the deep tech side, and on the interest for defense and security and challenge fit. So a couple of things that founders might find interesting. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Kelly, Adrian.